Welcome back. The midterms are 2 weeks away. At stake is control of Congress and the governor's mansion. But our attention this week was dominated by the grotesque apparent murder and dismemberment of a Washington Post journalist by our dear friends, the Saudis. Just moments ago, the Saudi government finally acknowledged Jamal Khashoggi is dead and 18 Saudis have been detained. There are still a whole lot of questions, and among them is President Trump's refusal to hold up an arms deal until the Saudis come clean. Republicans and Democrats in Congress don't agree on much, but they're joined by the hip on this. The Saudi government and the Saudi prince are buds with Jared Kushner, but he should not be friends of ours. And joining us for more are Joe Gruters, the chairman of the Sarasota Republican Party, former state representative Keith Fitzgerald, and Janelle Arryn of FloridaPolitics.com. But first, our poll question of the day. And here's ABC7 digital producer Chloe Convoy. Chloe.
Alan, today we posted a question on our Facebook page asking viewers if they think the Trump administration has been tough enough on Saudi Arabia, demanding answers to the apparent murder of the Washington Post journalist. We already have a total of 300 votes, and 77% of our Facebook viewers say the Trump administration is not being tough enough, and 23% of you say Trump is being tough enough on Saudi Arabia. Coming up, I will share some of your comments on our Facebook poll. Alan, back to you.
Chloe, thanks. So this is obviously a breaking story here, but let's put it into context in terms of our domestic politics. Joe, we saw the president last night talking about democratic mobs and the violence, really some harsh language there. It seems the language about Democrats is harsher than about the Saudis and considering this grotesque murder.
I don't think we always know what exactly is happening in D.C. within his intelligence community, within the White House. I think what they did to this journalist is abhorrent. I think it's terrible. I think we need to have a strong response. I think we need to do whatever we can to protect the integrity of journalism. And we can't let anybody get away with this type of activity because it will discourage people from telling the truth, from being forthright on articles and everything else, and the press, as much as sometimes as politicians we don't like them or what they say, we need them to tell the truth, and because the truth will set you free, and I hope that we get to the bottom of this soon.
Does that include not canceling the defense contract?
I think what I heard President Trump say is not canceling the defense contract because that's only going to hurt us as Americans and our workers that are working in those factories here in America. I guarantee you that President Trump right now is working with his team, and you don't always see everything that's happening on the international stage. They don't want to sometimes dictate the response that they're going to give, but I know this is important to a lot of people and the entire country and to all journalists and to really everybody at home is watching this. It's very important.
Keith, because of it's an incredibly complicated picture in terms of our interests there, including with the Saudis here, but it does seem on Capitol Hill you have a lot of Republicans and Democrats wanting to take some pretty severe action.
Well, this is a fiasco. Joe made reference to President Trump's team. He has no team. We have no ambassador in Saudi Arabia. We have no ambassador in Turkey. We don't have people working the desk in those areas in the State Department. So this is really the cost of sort of amateur foreign policy where people think that everything is transactional. The United States is more than an arms deal. The United States is a protector of liberties, and we've really fallen apart in that role.
Janelle, do you get any kind of sense that people in our area really care about this story?
It's not at the top of their list by any means. People are really focused on issues close to home, especially in this area. Red tide is obviously right up there towards the top. But what you are hearing from people is the politicization of such a horrible event. And from the Democratic side, I think there's a lot of, is the demonization of the media sort of a catalyst for something like this happening? Did it give the Saudis kind of a false sense of security that they would somehow get away with it? So perhaps you might see it being something that's kind of in the home stretch here before November 6th.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on the week in Washington continues. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in politics, and joining us for more are Joe Gruters, the chairman of the Sarasota Republican Party, former state representative Keith Fitzgerald, and Janelle Arryn of FloridaPolitics.com. We have a lot of ground to cover. But let's talk about the environment just a little bit. The president is on the campaign swing out west, And a lot of Republicans on the national basis are talking about the angry Democratic mobs, and they believe that is going to get Republicans to the polls in just a couple of weeks. And then the president said this last night about a new congressman who became famous for body slamming a reporter while he was running for election. Let's take a look.
But Greg is smart. And by the way, never wrestle him. You understand that? Never. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind of. And he was way up. And he was way up, and I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him. And it did.
So the president's talking about body slamming reporters, and the crowd is roaring. Which angry mob, Joe, are we talking about?
I think a lot of that is done in jest and fun. I think the national environment overall is going extremely well because the policies that Donald Trump has championed. The economy is humming. We have lots of successes on the ground, both domestically and internationally. The guy's done more for our country in the first 2 years of his presidency than most people serve in 2 terms. I mean, it's people are happy with the president. They're happy with the direction of the country. And as a result, I think the voters will reward Republicans.
Keith, there is a different feeling now than, let's just say, a couple of weeks before the Kavanaugh hearing. Yeah, Joe is right. The numbers, economic numbers, by and large, are pretty good if you look at them in a certain way. And the president is appealing to his base when he's talking about angry mobs of Democrats or the caravan coming from South America.
Well, first of all, most people are not happy. All you have to do is look at the polls, and you can see that. President's support level is about 40%, which is absolutely astounding given how well the economy is doing. The economy has been in a steady 9-year recovery. There hasn't been any great big change. But I do want to say that when a political leader starts talking about the opposition being illegitimate, the press as being the enemy of the people, and that violence in politics has an appropriate place, a country's in serious trouble. This is a pattern, and we should take it seriously. It's not a joke.
Janelle, again, over the last, it looked like the Democrats were standing in terms of making real inroads. Just look at the congressional races in the Tampa Bay area from the 16th up north. And then we got the news this week that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee was canceling its ads there. So I hate to put it this way, but did the Democrats peak too early? Has the momentum shifted, at least in our area?
I think it depends on what part of the area you're in. Florida is an incredibly varied state. So when you're in one county, you can have pockets of different political leanings, and you're going to have urban centers that are going to lean left and more suburban and rural areas that are going to lean right. And what I see is that no matter what happens on the presidential stage, you have the people who are appalled and you have the people who are cheering the president on. And then you have the people in the middle. And what Joe said earlier when we were talking, it really comes down to the independent voters and do they like Trump or don't they? And you really just have to kind of look at whether or not people are seeing these sorts of attacks as an attack on the media and as something that's unpresidential, something that's dangerous for our nation, or are they seeing it as something that is done in jest? And I think that President Trump is banking on the fact that this is something that's going to help Republicans as they move forward with the midterms.
All right, we have to take another quick break, and we'll have much more on the week in politics, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in politics, and joining us for more are Joe Gritters, chairman of the Sarasota Republican Party, former state representative Keith Fitzgerald, and Janelle Irwin of FloridaPolitics.com. But first, let's get a check-in on our poll question and your comments with ABC7 digital producer Chloe Conboy. Chloe.
Alan, earlier today I asked our viewers on Facebook if they think the Trump administration have been tough enough on Saudi Arabia demanding answers to the apparent murder of the Washington Post journalist. Here's what some of you had to say on Facebook. Chris says, I wish we cared about American citizens as we do these foreign nationals. Why is this our problem? Was this guy not a supporter of bin Laden? Phil responded to Chris's comment saying he lived in Virginia and worked for the Washington Post. His kids are American citizens, but torturing and dismembering him is all right with you. There's still time left to vote in the poll and comment on our Facebook post, so go share your thoughts with us. Alan, back to you.
Chloe, thank you very much. Interesting comments there. But let's talk a little bit more about local politics, and we start talking about the 16th Congressional District. It is one of the most watched congressional campaigns in the entire United States. A lot of attention on it, but news this week, Keith, that the DCCC was pulling a lot of its advertising both in Sarasota and the Tampa Bay area, and that is important because this congressional district not only is Sarasota, but it's Manatee, and a third of the district is Hillsborough County.
Well, first of all, God and the DCCC only have one thing in common, and that is they both work in mysterious ways. So I don't know what the thinking of the DCCC is on this. It's obviously not good news for David Shapiro, who's a friend of mine. One thing that I think you want to keep in mind is that 70% of the people in this district vote early. So a lot of the TV campaign has already been, has hit the audience. David has outside help through the end of the campaign, so it's not like he's going to disappear. So not good news, but the campaign goes on, and I think David still has a chance.
Joe, obviously this is good news for Congressman Buchanan, but the Shapiro campaign would point out to us that campaigns and races break late, and so we still don't know exactly how this is going to end up, although some of the public polling out there over the last couple of weeks has shown Shapiro behind by anywhere from 7 to 9 points.
That's like when a major league team sells off their best couple of players and say they're still trying to compete for a championship. This race is over. There's been 3 polls, basically double digits in a row. Vern Buchanan represents this district well. He's a center-right guy. He's not up in D.C. He doesn't fight. He does everything he should do to represent a district like Sarasota, Manatee, and Southern Hillsborough. He is a true reflection of the district, and I think as a result, and what you've seen in the national shift, here locally, I can tell you, I think we've seen a tremendous shift back over to the conservative side, back over to the Republican side, I think by as much as 15 points. And I think that Congressman Buchanan has benefited. I think he's helped lead that effort and helped lead Republicans back towards the positive side. And I think he's well on his way to re-election. There's nothing that can stop this movement now.
But we have seen here in Sarasota and throughout the Tampa Bay area some kind of unprecedented motivation by Democrats, canvassing on the weekends, hundreds of them at a time here. Has all that gone away, or do we know where those MPAs, those all-important independent voters, are going to come down?
So, no, the momentum has not gone away, not by a long shot. Now, it doesn't look good for Shapiro. There are some polls that have him above 50%, and if that is the case, then Shapiro could go and get all of those undecided voters and still lose. So that's a really big deal. But he's still got plenty of cash. He's outraised Buchanan, something like $875,000 versus $500,000 from Buchanan, half of which was his own money. So I think that there's still some strength there. But the DCCC pulling out is telling, and it's really going to take that ground game. And I think the one message that I tell people over and over again is, in the era of Trump, don't count anybody out, because you don't know if polls are right anymore.
Well, here's one question I have here, and I would imagine what looms large is at this very table, the trapezoid in a couple of days, the one and only debate between David Shapiro and Congressman Vern Buchanan. Keith, you have debated Congressman Buchanan yourself. How important is that debate? Can it really make that much of a difference?
It can if people watch it. And now candidates have more tools to push something like this, because you broadcast it, then it's going to run on YouTube and so forth, so they can get more legs out of it than they could when I ran, for example. Just wasn't done very much. So I think it's really crucial for David. It is true. I don't think anybody disputes that the money going away is not a good thing, but he does still have money, and this is a good opportunity for him because he can do well. He can push the results of the debate all over the place.
Joe, how important is this debate?
Well, I think now Shapiro is running to make it as close of a race as he can. This race is over. It's been over for a couple of weeks now, and now it's about saving face and trying to make a good show. Buchanan, my guess, is will end up winning by over 10 points. This race was close. I'll tell you, Shapiro's a great candidate. They did a great job. He's done a great job raising money. He's done a great job out there in the community. selling his agenda. But unfortunately, this is a Republican area. This is a Republican seat. And at the end of the day, Congressman Buchanan deserves to be reelected because he's done. He represents the community well, and it's hard to. That's why incumbents win 93% of the time.
One race that remains close is the governor's race between the Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum and former Congressman Ron DeSantis. Joe, the polls are still within points, but the mayor is still leading, even though he is only back on the campaign trail today after taking more than a week off.
Listen, Florida is a purple state, unlike our area, which is a Republican area. Florida itself is a purple state. Governor Scott won both of his governor's campaigns by under 100,000 votes. I think that this race is going to come down to the end, and it's going to come down to who has the best ground game, who gets their voters out, and that's why, for all you voters out there watching, please vote early. We need every single one of you.
Keith, is it ground game so much as what we see on television? The advertisements have been absolutely nasty. The DeSantis ad basically saying that Gillum is under investigation as it is a fact and that he is corrupt. PolitiFact has said that was not truthful. On the other hand, as you saw Gillum today, Gillum is trying to tie Gillum contributors to the Venezuelan dictator.
Honestly, I don't know what that claim was about, but I thought it was very unfortunate that Congressman DeSantis continued to run negative ads into the broadcast area where the hurricane was coming. It's another one of these things where there are lines you just really shouldn't cross. He could have pulled back on that, as Andrew Gillum did. I agree with what Joe said. This is going to be determined by the voters. Getting out the voters is a big difference. Whoever has the best ground game will have a huge advantage. I think we have another advantage, which is the Democratic candidate, Andrew Gillum, is a really dynamic, optimistic guy, and people are starved for optimism in politics.
Right, Janelle, I want you to weigh in on that, but we do have to take a quick break. We'll be back. Welcome back. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. But first, what are you thinking? Our digital producer, Chloe Convoy, is tracking your comments.
Alan, we had a lot of heated discussion on our Facebook poll today. We had a total number of 350 votes, with 78% of you saying no, the Trump administration is not being tough enough on Saudi Arabia, and 22% saying they are being tough enough. Again, thank you all for participating in the ABC7 Facebook poll. Be sure to go to our Facebook page to participate in the poll next Friday. Alan, back to you.
Chloe, thank you. So let's wrap up our conversation here. Janelle, we were talking about the 16th Congressional District and where Democrats in the area stand right now. What are you seeing throughout the greater area?
With that race specifically?
And the other congressional races here. We've had a number of contested races here. I know the race against Gus Bilirakis, the Democrat, is a great candidate, but it really has not gotten a lot of traction up there as well.
Well, again, you're running into a situation there where it's a predominantly conservative district. So you're banking on the blue wave coming through for Democrats in districts like that. But there are some things happening that I think could influence some of the outcomes. Bilirakis has recently kind of come under fire for several different things, kind of some deceptive polling practices.
And also taking credit for bills that he
didn't sponsor, when he in fact was actually somebody who was.
You know, Keith, the Democrats started this campaign with hopes on a lot of congressional districts, including 2 in Florida, congressional districts that Hillary Clinton won. And now those districts, the Republicans are coming back here. And so what does that tell you?
Well, one thing is that candidates matter. I think in the Shalala race, she is a very accomplished woman, has done amazing things in her career, but she hasn't been the greatest candidate. And so that race really should have been in the Democratic category. The other thing is, both sides will tend to get a big head early on if the polling looks good. This is Florida, it always tightens, and there will be surprises.
Joe, what are you looking at in terms of surprises in a couple of weeks? I mean, obviously, as Keith said, Florida always has a bag of tricks at hand here. What are you looking for?
I'm not really necessarily looking for surprises on Election Day here in Florida, because I think that some of the numbers are starting to settle. I think here locally, we've seen a trend. We've finally regained our momentum as Republicans. But Keith is exactly right. Candidates matter at the end of the day. You can't just throw up any candidate in any district and expect to win. We've seen that here locally over and over again. We've seen it across the country. And my guess is if you have the right campaign and the right message, and if you live in the right district, if you're conservative, you live in a conservative area, you're going to win. If you're a liberal and you live in a liberal district, you're going to win. And if it's a purple state, it's a flip of a coin this election cycle.
We have to leave it there. We want to thank Joe Gruters, chairman of the Sarasota Republican Party, former state representative Keith Fitzgerald, and Janelle Irwin of FloridaPolitics.com for joining us tonight. That's all the time we have for this evening. I'm Alan Cohn. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.